radar. All the island's remaining aircraft were scrambled. When the enemy arrived, the runways and hangars would be clear. Midway's fighters would be waiting to meet them, and the island's force of bombers and torpedo bombers would already be on their way to strike back at the Japanese carriers. In spite of the valiant efforts of Midway's mostly obsolete fighters, the Japanese bombers and dive bombers broke through without having lost a single aircraft. A single enemy carrier was sighted. On Midway Island and on the ships of the American task forces, the effect was electrifying. The Japanese were exactly where Admiral Nimitz had expected them to be. Shortly after the first sighting, one more vital piece of information was received from the Catalinas. A wave of strike aircraft was approaching the island. Admiral Nagumo turned his carriers into the wind and launched his first strike wave, 108 aircraft in all. The rest, including his most experienced aircrew, were held in reserve in case any American warships were discovered. Nagumo believed the possibility extremely remote, so only after his first wave had been sent to Midway did he order his reconnaissance aircraft to begin their search of the surrounding ocean. Long-range hitting power of American aircraft carriers.
Decisive victories of the war. Nagumo's entire carrier strike force, including 4 of Japan's 6 large carriers, had been annihilated in one bold stroke, greatly reducing Japan's ability to wage an offensive war in the Pacific. A leading writer at the time said of the Americans, they had no right to win, but they did, and in doing so, changed the course of the war. Still at very low altitude, on the flight decks of the Japanese carriers, crews had completed the refueling process. With virtually no opposition, the American bombers went into steep dives and delivered their bombs on the vulnerable Japanese carriers. The first Japanese carrier, Nagumo's flagship, the Akagi. A wave of bombers from the Yorktown arrived on the scene and administered a similar fate to a third carrier, the Soryu. The fourth carrier, the Hiryu, having become separated from the formation, did not initially come under attack. Its planes launched their own attack on the American carriers, inflicting severe damage on the Yorktown. But American pilots hunted down the Hiryu in the afternoon and sank it. Even though the U.S. Navy lost the Yorktown to a Japanese submarine as she was being towed back to decisive victories of the war, Nagumo's entire carrier strike force, including 4 of Japan's 6 large carriers, had been annihilated in one bold stroke, greatly reducing Japan's ability to wage an offensive war in the Pacific. A leading writer at the time said of the Americans, they had no right to win, but they did, and in doing so,